Relax, for the universe is not a distant power watching you from afar. It is responding to you, echoing the assumptions you hold and the states you occupy. Everything you see, touch, and experience is only the outpicturing of your inner world. The drama of your life is not written by chance, nor is it dictated by fate. It is authored by your imagination, moment by moment, thought by thought. And when you relax and you step into stillness and trust, you open the gates to receive all that has been prepared for you from the foundation of your desire. You are not waiting for something to happen outside. The shift occurs within. Your job is not to strive and force things into place. It is to become the version of yourself who already has it. The universe has already said yes to your inner conviction. All you are ever doing is aligning with the version of reality that already exists within you. Your desire is not random. It is a seed. And the moment you felt it, it was already fulfilled. When you relax, you stop resisting the flow. You stop interrupting the pattern with doubt and fear. You are the operant power, and your world is clay responding to the hands of your imagination. There is no power outside of consciousness, and no one can rob you of what you claim in the silence of your mind. If you can imagine it clearly, feel it as though it were true, and rest in the assurance of its reality, then it must appear in your world. But that appearance is not your work. It is the work of the unseen hand that shapes your outer world to reflect your inner conviction. Your only task is to assume the state and dwell in it until it becomes more real than the facts that confront you. Relax, because what you think is a delay is only the movement of shadows shifting to make room for your light. What you perceive as absence is the perfect preparation for the fullness to arrive. You are not lacking. You are not separate from what you want. You are one with it. The more you relax into that truth, the more the illusion of waiting dissolves. It comes when you no longer need it to come, because you already are the person who possesses it. The universe responds to being, not begging. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Sink into the feeling of already having it. Let that feeling dominate your inner conversation. Let your thoughts loop around joy, gratitude, and certainty. Let your emotions become a soft melody of fulfillment. When the noise of the world grows loud, turn within and listen to the quiet truth that says it is done. Every assumption you accept hardens into fact, not because the world is magic, but because you are. You are the dreamer in the act of dreaming, and the dream is your life. There is nothing too big, nothing too impossible. If you can believe it is already yours, it becomes yours. Relax. There is no competition in imagination, no obstacle in consciousness. All is available, all is waiting, but it waits for your alignment, not your effort. It waits for your relaxation into the state of already having it. It waits for your inner surrender to the truth that what you feel inside is more powerful than what you see outside. The moment you drop resistance, the moment you stop asking how and start living from the now, the universe bends in your favor. It rearranges timelines, people, events, circumstances, and chance encounters just to mirror back to you the state you dared to assume. You don't need to understand how it happens. You only need to know that it does. So let go. Let go of the struggle. Let go of the fear. Let go of the illusion that you must strive to earn what is already yours. Relax, because the universe is about to give you everything. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. The universe does not operate independently of your inner world. It is not a detached force casting random events upon your life. Instead, it is an infinite mirror, reflecting back to you the very substance of your inner states. Everything you experience, every joy, every conflict, every breakthrough, and every delay is born first in consciousness. Your mind is not a passive observer of reality. It is the projector of it. The world around you dances to the rhythm of your assumptions, your emotions, your deeply held beliefs. If you live in a state of fear, lack, or doubt, the world must present itself accordingly. If you dwell in a state of peace, abundance, and fulfillment, the universe has no choice but to conform to that inner tone. This is not mere philosophy or poetic metaphor, it is the nature of reality. Consciousness is the only reality, and everything outside is an echo. You are not reacting to life, you are witnessing the reflection of what you have assumed to be true. When you understand this, the power to change your world no longer feels like a distant hope. It becomes a direct and deliberate act. The universe is impersonal in this regard. It does not judge what it reflects. It merely brings forth what you claim to be true in the silence of your imagination. What you dwell on mentally becomes your dominant state, and that dominant state becomes your experience. Thoughts may come and go, but the ones you accept emotionally, the ones you return to habitually, those are the seeds planted in the soil of consciousness. And the universe, being infinitely obedient, simply brings them to harvest. That's why two people can live in the same circumstances and yet experience vastly different lives, because they are living in different inner realities. If one sees opportunity, the other sees lack. One assumes they are loved and supported, the other assumes they are rejected and forgotten. And so it is done unto them as they believe. This understanding transforms the way you see everything. No longer is the outer world something to fear or control. No longer are you at the mercy of conditions or waiting for someone else to give you permission to thrive. You realize that you are the one writing the script. You are the cause, not the effect. Your imagination is not daydreaming. It is creation. And the state you occupy is not just a feeling. It is a command to the universe. The power of this truth lies in its simplicity. You do not need to struggle to make things happen. You do not need to manipulate circumstances or people. All you need to do is change the state within. Choose a new assumption. Persist in the belief that your desire is already yours. See the world through that lens. Feel it in your body. Let it become your new normal. And the world outside must reorganize itself to mirror that change. You cannot experience what you do not first accept inwardly. If you want love, you must assume you are lovable. If you want abundance, you must assume you are abundant. If you want peace, you must assume that all is well. These are not abstract ideas, they are living vibrations, and the universe is attuned to them perfectly. It picks up on your dominant frequency and responds accordingly. There is no need to plead or bargain. You simply radiate the reality you wish to live, and it returns to you multiplied. This is why your inner conversation is sacred. The thoughts you repeat when no one is listening, the emotions you allow to circulate through your being, the images you hold before you as real, all of these are shaping your tomorrow. You are always imagining something, whether consciously or unconsciously. The question is not whether you are creating, but what you are creating. When you realize that your inner world is the blueprint, you take responsibility for everything you experience, not in guilt, but in empowerment. Here's your invitation. Come to work and work. What if right now you stop blaming the outer world for how you feel and began to see it as the feedback loop it truly is? What if you viewed every unwanted condition not as punishment, but as a signal that your internal assumption needs revision? What if you no longer tried to fix the mirror, but instead turned within to adjust the face that it reflects? This shift in awareness is not always easy, but it is everything. It means you are no longer a victim. It means the key has been in your hand all along. You cannot deceive consciousness. You can say affirmations all day, but if you continue to dwell in a state of fear or unworthiness, that is what will be reflected. You must feel the new truth as though it is already done. You must believe before you see. This is not blind faith. It is creative knowing. It is the understanding that the seen arises from the unseen, that form follows feeling, that experience follows imagination. This is why you must be vigilant about your inner world, not from a place of anxiety or obsession, but from a place of reverence. You are not a bystander to your life. You are the cause of it. Every situation, every relationship, every turn of events is reflecting something you have assumed to be true. And the beautiful thing is that you can change it. At any moment, you can occupy a new state, you can choose a new story, and when you persist in that new state, the universe must respond. There is no external God deciding who is blessed and who is cursed. There is only consciousness responding to itself. You are that consciousness. The universe is not outside of you, it is within you, responding to you, reflecting you. You are not asking it to bless you. You are recognizing that it already is and aligning your thoughts and feelings with that truth. The moment you do, the mirror must change. Not because you forced it, but because it has no choice. It is bound by law to reflect what you assume. Desire is not something you stumble upon by accident. It does not come from outside of you, and it is never separate from your ability to fulfill it. The moment a true desire is born within you, it is proof that its fulfillment already exists in consciousness. You are not here to chase your desires. You are here to awaken to the fact that they are already accomplished. Imagination is not a tool of fantasy. It is the gateway to reality. What you can imagine and feel to be true is more real than what your senses can presently verify. The senses only report what is, but imagination reveals what can be and what already is in the unseen. The minute you imagine something with feeling, you shift into a new state of consciousness. And each state is a dimension of reality that already exists, waiting for you to enter it fully. The world you want is not built in the future. It is selected in the present. And imagination is the act of selection. There are infinite versions of you, infinite outcomes, infinite lives available. And your desires are simply invitations to step into the version that contains the fulfillment you long for. You are not meant to wait. You are meant to accept the desire as done in your imagination and begin living as though it were already yours. This is the true art of creation, to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you sit in silence and imagine the scene that would take place if your desire were already real, you are doing far more than daydreaming. You are planting the seed in the soil of consciousness. And if you persist in that assumption, refusing to be swayed by outer appearances, the invisible will become visible. That scene will move from imagination into fact, because it was already real the moment you accepted it as true within yourself. Reality follows the feeling, not the other way around. There is no power in the outer world that can prevent your desire from manifesting once you have fully assumed it within. The delay people experience is not due to time or fate or lack of worthiness. It is due to wavering in assumption. One moment you believe it is yours, the next you doubt. You imagine it in meditation but contradict it with worry throughout the day. You plant the seed, but then dig it up to see if it's growing. The key is to remain faithful to the unseen, to persist in the state of already having received it. That inner conviction is the force that hardens into fact. Desire, when felt as already fulfilled, becomes a living reality in consciousness. And once it is alive in you, it must be reflected in your world. The mistake people often make is thinking they need to do something to make it happen. But imagination does not need to be assisted. It is complete in itself. The only work is inner work. You need not struggle in the outer world to bring it about. You simply need to bring yourself into alignment with the version of reality in which it is already so. This is why feeling is so important. Words alone are not enough. Repeating phrases like a parrot will not shift your reality unless those words stir something within you. The subconscious mind responds to feeling, not empty repetition. It is through the intensity and vividness of your inner experience that you convince the deeper self that it is true. And once that conviction is felt, the subconscious moves all things to fulfill it. The outer world becomes the stage on which your inner belief performs. The desire itself is sacred. It is not something to suppress or feel ashamed of. It is not a sign of lack, but a sign of what is possible. You are not given a desire that you do not also have the power to fulfill. The very fact that you can feel it is evidence that somewhere in consciousness it is already yours. And the more clearly you can see it in your mind, the more natural it becomes to your emotional body. The faster it will express in the world of form. Time is not the issue, alignment is. You don't need to figure out how it will come. That is not your role. The bridge of incidents will appear in ways you never could have planned. People will show up, circumstances will shift. What seemed impossible will suddenly feel inevitable. But it will never begin until you accept within yourself that the desire is already fulfilled. That is the only real step, and it is the only one that matters. Everything else flows from that point. Imagination is your entrance into the creative act, and when used consciously, it becomes your power to reorder the structure of your life. You are not limited by what has happened in the past. You are not trapped by what your senses currently report. You can close your eyes and enter into a new reality through the doorway of imagination. You can see what you wish to see, hear what you wish to hear, feel what you wish to feel, and by doing so, you begin to inhabit that new version of yourself. And the world must conform to that identity. You are never waiting on the universe. You are only waiting on yourself to become convinced that what you desire is already yours. Once that conviction is established, manifestation becomes inevitable. It becomes a natural unfolding rather than a forced event. There is no need to beg or plead or bargain. There is only the need to accept, to surrender to the truth that what you want you already have in the realm that matters most, consciousness. And from that realm, all things are made. The universe responds to the version of you that you occupy. If you remain in the state of wanting, you perpetuate the experience of lack. But if you dwell in the state of having, then the outer world has no choice but to catch up. The moment you stop needing your desire to prove itself to you and instead become the person who already possesses it, the shift is complete. The delay dissolves and the fulfillment begins to flow. This is not a game of pretending. It is a discipline of becoming. Becoming the version of yourself who lives in the end, becoming so inwardly secure in your assumption that nothing in the outer world can shake it. That is the true power. And when you understand that your desires are already fulfilled in imagination, you stop chasing them. You start embodying them. And that embodiment is the signal the universe cannot ignore. It must respond because it is already done. When you relax, something extraordinary happens within the invisible realms of creation. You release the resistance that clogs the channel through which your desires flow. Most people live in a constant state of inattention, worrying, doubting, analyzing, overthinking. They believe that the more effort they exert, the closer they'll get to what they want. But true creation does not respond to effort. It responds to alignment. And alignment is effortless when you're in the state of knowing that what you want is already yours. It is in that moment of inner stillness, of quiet certainty, that your desire begins to crystallize into form. Tension is the offspring of fear. It arises when you believe that what you desire might not come to you. It comes from the assumption that life is uncertain and that you must struggle to ensure your needs are met. But all of this is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality works. You are not waiting for the world to deliver your desire. You are the source of your experience, and the outer world simply reflects the internal state you consistently occupy. To relax is not to give up, it is to give in to the truth of your power. When you rest in the awareness that your imagination creates reality, you realize that there is no need to strive, push, or rush. Effort implies separation. It carries the belief that the thing you want is out there and must be earned, convinced, or wrestled into your possession. But when you relax, you step into the state of unity. You remember that what you desire is not outside of you, it is within you, in the unseen already complete. The only reason it has not yet appeared in your outer world is because you have not fully accepted it within. You cannot bring something into your world while simultaneously doubting its presence. You cannot receive while you are tensed in disbelief. When you are relaxed, you are receptive. You become a magnet to the very thing you thought you had to chase. In that relaxed state, your imagination is free to roam, unburdened by resistance, fear, or logic. It is here, in this stillness, that your most potent creative power emerges. You don't need to know how your desire will unfold. You don't need to figure out every step. You only need to allow the image to form in your imagination and feel its reality with ease. The universe is not slow, it is precise. It responds not to your effort, but to the clarity and constancy of your assumption. Relaxation provides the soil in which your inner vision can take root and grow. This is why so many breakthroughs happen when people finally let go. They dream and hope and visualize and affirm, but nothing happens until they reach a point where they say, I've done enough. I'll let it be. And it's in that moment, that sacred pause, that the desire begins to move toward them. Why? Because they stop resisting it. They stop fighting their current circumstances and allowed the deeper truth of their desire to live within them without contradiction. Relaxation is the natural result of inner faith. When you truly believe it is done, you don't feel tense. You don't feel desperate. You feel light, playful, even joyful. That feeling state is the signal that you are in harmony with your desire. Many are conditioned to equate seriousness with success, as though only those who work the hardest and suffer the most are worthy of receiving. But in the realm of consciousness, the opposite is often true. The more lightly you hold your desire, the more effortlessly it comes. This does not mean you become indifferent. It means you embody such complete trust that you no longer cling. You no longer demand signs or obsessively check for results. You no longer interpret delays as denials. You simply relax, knowing that what you have accepted in imagination must be reflected in your world. Relaxation is the doorway to surrender, not to fate, but to the unseen intelligence within you that orchestrates all things perfectly. It is the surrender of ego, of control, of trying to manipulate outcomes. It is the willingness to trust the process and rest in the awareness that consciousness is the only cause. You are not begging life to give you something. You are aligning with the version of yourself who already has it. And that version of you does not feel panic. That version of you lives in peace because it knows the truth. It is already done. When you live in this relaxed state, even your actions become effortless. You move not from a place of need, but from a place of knowing. You take inspired steps because they feel natural, not because you believe they will make it happen. You no longer seek to force the world into shape. Instead, you allow the world to shape itself around the conviction you've assumed. And the more you relax, the faster this shaping occurs because there is no opposing frequency within you to block it. To relax is to trust the rhythm of your own becoming. It is to tune in to the silent language of the universe that whispers, you already have what you seek. It is to recognize that the sense of urgency you feel is not truth. It is simply the byproduct of the illusion of separation. The moment you accept that there is no separation between you and your desire, urgency vanishes. You no longer feel pressure to create. It becomes as natural as breathing. You no longer live from the question, will it happen, but from the declaration, it is happening now. The world will always tempt you to panic. The circumstances around you will scream that your desire is far away, that nothing is changing, that time is running out. But the relaxed mind is not swayed by appearances. It is anchored in the invisible, where all things are already completed. You become immune to delay because you no longer live by the clock. You live by inner knowing. And from that knowing, you radiate a calm confidence that draws the future into your present. And when you leap to that knowing, you radiate a calm confidence that draws the future into your present. Letting go of effort does not mean doing nothing. It means doing from a place of peace rather than panic. It means allowing your desire to unfold through you rather than trying to push it into existence. It means living in alignment with the end you've already imagined without anxiety or doubt. When you move from this place, your actions are precise, your energy is clear, and the bridge of incidents begins to form with stunning accuracy. You don't manifest what you obsess over, you manifest what you rest in. The more you relax, the more magnetic you become to the reality you have already claimed within. Because in relaxation, you are not trying to make something happen. You are allowing the truth of your inner vision to express itself naturally. This is the ultimate act of faith. To rest while the unseen goes to work. To trust while nothing on the outside has changed. To remain calm because you know the truth is already alive within you. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to become the version of yourself who already has what you desire. It is not to beg, plead, or wish. It is not to hope that someday your dream might come true. It is to move into the state where it has already happened and to live from that state inwardly, regardless of what the outer world says. This is the secret so few understand. That creation is finished, and what you desire exists now in a dimension that can only be accessed through your imagination and sustained by your faith in its reality. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not pretending. You are not engaging in fantasy or escape. You are aligning with the truth that consciousness is the only reality and that everything begins with a state. Your outer world is the shadow cast by your inner being. The events you experience, the people you meet, the opportunities that come your way, All are shaped and molded by the state of consciousness you habitually occupy. If you remain in a state of wanting, of lacking, of not having, then you will continue to see reflections of that state in the world around you. But when you assume that your desire is already yours, when you feel it as natural and true, the universe begins to rearrange itself to match that assumption. This is not magic, it is law. Consciousness does not lie. It reflects with perfect fidelity the inner state you embody. And it is your feeling that impresses the subconscious mind, not your words or your efforts. You must feel the truth of your desire being fulfilled so deeply that it becomes more real to you than the facts your senses report. That inner conviction is the force that bends your reality. This is why you must become still and enter into the state mentally and emotionally. You must construct the scene that would be true if your wish were fulfilled, and you must feel it. Not just think about it, but feel it as if it were unfolding right now. The warmth in your chest, the calm in your body, the joy that rises spontaneously. These are signs that you are in the right state. And once you are there, you must remain there, return to it often, make it your dwelling place. You must think from it, act from it, respond to life as if it were already done. Many people live from the state of not having. They speak their affirmations, visualize for a few minutes, and then spend the rest of the day worrying, doubting, and noticing how things still haven't changed. They unconsciously return to the old state, the state of it's not here yet. But the world does not respond to the momentary spark of imagination. It responds to the sustained vibration of assumption. It responds to the inner identity you claim as your own. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are claiming that identity. You are saying, this is who I am now. And once you claim that, the world will begin to reflect it. You will see changes, some subtle, some obvious, but the outer world is slow to move because it is a shadow. The real movement happens in consciousness, and the outer follows. Just as the hands of a clock move only after the inner mechanism turns, so too does your reality shift only after the inner state changes. The assumption is the movement, the assumption is the creative act. You don't need to explain how it will happen. You don't need to share your vision with others or convince anyone of its truth. The universe is not a democratic system where others vote on your manifestation. It is an echo chamber that reflects your own belief back to you. And when you assume something is real, you close the gap between imagination and reality. You stop waiting and begin living. You no longer react to the old world, you respond from the new one. You have already claimed, in imagination, this assumption must be natural, not forced. You do not need to strain to believe, you only need to immerse yourself so deeply in the feeling that your body begins to respond as if it were true. That is the language the subconscious understands, not logic, not effort, but feeling. If your desire were fulfilled, how would you walk? How would you speak? How would you look at life? Begin now to carry yourself with that same energy. Let your posture, your words, your energy match that version of you. This is why the practice of imagining before sleep is so powerful. In those drowsy moments, the critical mind relaxes and the subconscious becomes receptive. That is when you impress the new state most effectively. You don't try to manifest while asleep, you assume it, and the sleep seals it in. And if you do this repeatedly, if you persist until the assumption feels more real than the former story of lack, then manifestation becomes inevitable. The world must change because you have changed. What happens in the world is not your concern. Your concern is your state. Stay faithful to it, nurture it, feed it with your attention and emotion. Do not water the weeds of doubt. Water the seed of assumption with your belief and gratitude. Walk through life not as someone hoping to become, but as someone who already is. And from this state, everything flows, not as struggle, but as a natural unfolding. You cannot cling to the old self and expect the new reality. You must become the new self now. And that self does not wonder if the desire is coming. It knows. It sees evidence in every moment. It looks at the world and says, of course it's happening. How could it not? That is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That is the state of certainty that bends all things to your desire. You do not need to wait for the evidence before you believe. You need only believe, and the evidence will come. You need only become, and the world will echo your becoming. Pull one. This is, for me, quite important. You are not responsible for the how. The moment you assume full responsibility for the end, the means take care of themselves. The greatest relief in the process of creation is knowing that you do not need to orchestrate the unfolding. The universe is far more intelligent, far more efficient, far more precise than your limited reasoning mind. The bridge of incidents, the sequence of events that must occur to bring your desire into visible form, will unfold without your control. Your only task is to live from the end, to feel the reality of your desire so fully that it becomes more natural to you than your current circumstances. That shift in inner focus, that move from effort to surrender, is what allows the unseen power to flow unobstructed through your life. When you attempt to control the how, you become entangled in the very limitations you are trying to transcend. The mind begins to calculate, worry, analyze, compare, and fear. It begins to tell you stories about what is possible and what is not, based on your past experiences or what it deems logical. But manifestation does not follow logic. It follows law. Specifically, the law that what you feel is true within will be mirrored without. The how is never your domain. Your domain is the assumption, the state, the inner reality. That is where you live. That is where your power lies. The how belongs to the bridge. This bridge of incidents often appears so naturally, so organically, that you may not even recognize it as the pathway to your fulfillment. One event leads to another. One conversation opens a door. One delay becomes the blessing in disguise. One detour reveals the perfect route. And yet, if you were to try and plan these steps yourself, you could not possibly engineer the perfection with which the unseen coordinates the outcome. The conscious mind may suggest hundreds of possibilities, but the subconscious, responding to your assumption, knows the shortest and most harmonious path. It uses every means available: people, events, memories, timing, even your own so-called mistakes, to carry out the manifestation you've impressed upon it. Surrender is not giving up your desire, it's giving up your resistance. It is releasing the need to know every detail, to anticipate every step, to force every outcome. It is trusting the process, knowing that the desire is already fulfilled in the invisible, and that the visible world is simply catching up. This trust is not passive, it is profoundly active. It takes strength to rest in the unseen. It takes courage to believe without proof. But it is this unwavering belief, this internal alignment with the end, that initiates the movement of everything else. The more you try to manipulate the process, the more you interfere with the very intelligence that is working on your behalf. It's like planting a seed in the soil. Once the seed is planted, you don't stand over it all day pulling at the ground, trying to make it grow faster. You trust the soil, you water it, you keep the space nourished, and you wait, not in anxiety, but in assurance. You know the seed will break through because it's in the nature of the seed to grow when given the proper environment. Likewise, once your desire is planted in the fertile soil of consciousness through assumption, it must take root and grow into your experience. It cannot do otherwise. But if you dig it up daily to see whether it's growing, you delay the process, you choke the roots with doubt. The feeling of already having it must become your dominant inner reality. The assumption must become your home, your new identity. You carry it with you not as a fragile wish, but as a solid truth. And as you do, you begin to see the world bend and rearrange itself to reflect this new identity. But this reflection can only appear when you have fully let go of the need to force it. The moment you release the how, you allow the higher intelligence to take command. The moment you relax, the bridge begins to form. And it does so quietly, without fanfare, without struggle. Often, the how arrives in forms that your logical mind would never predict. A conversation overheard, a book picked up by chance, a sudden inspiration to go somewhere or call someone. These are not random, They are the bridge responding to your assumption. But if you are too focused on how you think it should happen, you may miss the actual path that is opening before you. The universe does not need your micromanagement. It needs your cooperation with its laws. It needs you to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled and let everything else fall into place around that foundation. This surrender does not mean inaction. It means inspired action. You may be moved to act, to create, to speak, to travel, to write, to explore. And that movement comes not from fear or urgency, but from a deep inner impulse that feels natural, joyful, inevitable. These actions are not done to get the manifestation. They are done as expressions of the state you already occupy. You act from the end, not toward it. You no longer ask, what should I do to make this happen? Instead, you ask, how does the version of me who already has this feel, think, act, and move through the world? And then you live that way. The bridge becomes visible only in retrospective, but you walk it by following your inner alignment. Time becomes irrelevant when you surrender the how. You are no longer watching the clock or measuring progress. You are no longer negotiating with the universe. You have stepped into a reality where it is already done, and therefore you are free. Free from striving, free from doubt, free from questioning. You know that the unseen has heard you because you have already felt it real. That feeling is your confirmation, and once it has been felt, the world must eventually reveal what you have already accepted. The more you release the how, the more you allow the miraculous. You make space for the extraordinary, for the route that defies logic, for the kind of unfolding that humbles the mind and uplifts the soul. You begin to experience reality not as a battlefield, but as a beautifully responsive echo. And every moment becomes a step in the dance between your assumption and its reflection. This is the power of surrender. Not the surrender of desire, but the surrender of resistance. Not the surrender of vision, but the surrender of interference. And in that sacred surrender, everything you've ever imagined finds its way to you. Quietly, naturally, and often far more swiftly than you could have ever planned. The greatest secret lies not in the outer world, but in the quiet conviction within. It is not about what you are waiting for. It is not about hoping that something may happen. It is about assuming that it already is. The world bows to the power of assumption, not the kind that pleads or begs, but the kind that knows, the kind that stands in the unseen realm and says, "This is mine, I am that which I desire to be." You are not here to chase anything. You are not here to convince others of your worth or to prove something to the world. You are here to awaken, to remember who you are, and to act not with desperation, but with calm certainty. The moment you decide to embody the end, you shift reality. You do not wait for the evidence. Imagine for a moment that you already have everything. Feel the warmth of the home you desire, the peace of financial freedom, the thrill of love returned, the satisfaction of dreams fulfilled. What if you no longer needed to wish for them because they were already yours? How would you speak? How would you walk? How would you treat others if the struggle had already passed and the victory was yours? The truth is, your outer world bends to the posture of your inner being. You must carry yourself like the one who has already won, not arrogantly, but in faith. Faith is not blind optimism. Faith is inner sight. It is the act of seeing the invisible and claiming it as more real than what your senses suggest. Do not consult the facts. They are old news. They are echoes of past beliefs. You are not the sum of your circumstances. You are the cause of them. The life you see around you is the outpictured mirror of your former assumption. If you do not like it, don't beg for change. Assume it. There is no power outside of your own consciousness. Nothing outside of you is holding anything back. It is all within reach, but you must reach by feeling, by assumption, by conviction. When you dare to act as if, you collapse the gap between desire and manifestation. The act is not one of pretending, it is one of living from the state. You think as the person who already has, and in doing so, you become. Speak as if the victory has already been declared. Walk as if the door has already been opened. Smile as if your miracle is already behind the curtain, waiting for you to claim it. Stop asking when. The moment you assume, the seed is planted, and no seed grows by constant digging. You water it with persistence in the state. You remain loyal to the unseen. Many wait for the sign before they believe. But the sign comes after the belief. It is the echo of your inner movement. So when your senses mock you, when doubt whispers its lies, when nothing seems to change, stand still and know. The moment you say, I am now the one who has it, and act like it, you give the universe no choice but to deliver. That is the law. You don't need to know how. You only need to dwell in the feeling that it already is. Let the world catch up. Let the bridge of incidents unfold. Your only task is to remain in the state of already having. When you truly accept this, your life becomes a living prayer, not one of pleading, but of gratitude. Because what you ask for is already done. This is the truth the world overlooks. This is the key buried in plain sight. Whatever you dare to claim within and persist in mentally will harden into fact. So act like you have everything, because in the deeper realm of consciousness, you already do. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to begin where most would wait. It is to step into the invisible and claim it as the truest version of reality, regardless of appearances. It is the recognition that imagination is not a place of fantasy, it is the womb of creation. Everything that has ever come into being began first as a thought, a picture, a sensation within someone's mind. And so to live as if the wish is already fulfilled is not madness, it is spiritual intelligence. The world calls it delusion, but the soul calls it faith. Most people live from a state of longing. They say, I hope this happens, or one day I'll have that. But in saying this, they unknowingly affirm that they do not yet have it. And in that declaration of lack, they continue to create the absence of the very thing they desire. The law does not bring to you what you want. It brings to you what you are conscious of being. Wanting and having are not the same vibration. If you are always in a state of wanting, then you are constantly affirming separation from your goal. But if you assume you have it, if you feel it as real, taste it, live it within, then you align with the state of already possessing it, and life responds accordingly. There is a quiet power in assumption, a sacred knowing that bypasses logic and transcends time. It is not arrogant, it is not boastful, it is still, confident, and creative. The moment you assume a thing is yours, you stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop fearing, you relax into it, you become it. The feeling of having causes your entire being to shift. Your speech changes, your walk changes, your reactions change. Why? Because you are now thinking from the end, not toward it. Suppose you desire wealth. You do not affirm that you are poor, nor do you chase after money with desperation. Instead, you sit quietly and imagine what it would feel like to have your needs met abundantly. Not what it looks like, but what it feels like. You imagine the relief, the gratitude, the security, the joy. You step into that emotional state and allow it to envelop you. Then you carry that state into your daily life. You spend with trust, you speak with generosity. You live as if money is no longer your master. And something begins to happen. Reality, obedient to your assumption, begins to shift. Or imagine you long for love. Rather than sitting in loneliness and bitterness, waiting for someone to complete you, you go inward. You ask, what would it feel like to be cherished, to be understood, to be loved deeply? And you feel it. You walk as though you are already loved, already chosen. You treat yourself with tenderness. You send kindness into the world, not to receive something in return, but because you are overflowing from a state of inner wholeness, and that energy calls back to itself. It is the law. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you bypass the natural man's questions. How will it happen? When will it happen? Is it even possible? None of those matter in the realm of creation. You are not here to figure out the mechanics. You are here to assume the state. The moment you do, The machinery of the universe is set into motion to bring about the appropriate bridge of incidents to carry you from the unseen to the seen. And you do not need to manipulate any of it. You only need to remain in the state. This is why imagination is your most sacred tool. It is the instrument through which you plant the seed, and your feelings are the water. You must not imagine passively like watching a movie screen. You must enter into the scene and feel the reality of it. Feel the texture of the life you desire. Feel the presence of the answered prayer. And then let go of the need to see it immediately. Trust that it is done. Just as a seed does not sprout the moment it is buried, your assumption takes time to blossom. But blossom it will if you remain faithful. You cannot dwell in the state of already having and continue to speak of lack. You cannot say, I am wealthy, and then talk about how little you have. You cannot say, I am healed, and then act as though you are still broken. The mind must be aligned with the state, and that is not pretending, it is claiming. There is a difference. Pretending hopes, assuming knows. One looks around and doubts, the other looks within and affirms. You must become deeply acquainted with the sensation of already having. It must live in your bones, settle in your breath, rest in your words. If you wake up and still feel like it's far away, go back to your imagination and dwell there until the feeling overtakes you. Let it be so real inside that the outer world becomes irrelevant. And as strange as it may sound, when you no longer need it to appear, because it already feels so real, it begins to appear. This is not magic, this is alignment. The outer must follow the inner. It is law. Your only responsibility is to stay in the end, to refuse the seduction of appearances, to deny the evidence of the senses that tells you nothing is changing. Because every time you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you reinforce the structure of the new reality. You are building the unseen house, brick by brick, feeling by feeling, assumption. You are not lying to yourself when you assume the wish fulfilled. You are awakening to a higher truth. You are declaring that the unseen is more real than the seen. And when that conviction is sustained, the world will shape itself to match your inner state. It cannot do otherwise. So return again and again to that place within, the place where it is already done, the place where you no longer ask but give thanks, where you no longer seek but rest, where you no longer desire but are. Everything you see around you is a reflection of what you have accepted within. The outer world, with all its noise and movement, is simply a mirror, neutral, obedient, and precise. It does not invent or initiate anything on its own. It waits for instruction. And that instruction is always delivered silently through the beliefs you hold, the feelings you nurture, and the assumptions you carry. Like garments worn on your soul, the world, for all its complexity, does not define you, it reflects you. This truth is often the most difficult to accept, for it removes the illusion of blame. It takes away the comfort of pointing fingers and waiting on external saviors. But it is also the most liberating realization, because it places the power back into your hands. If the outer is shaped by the inner, then change begins not with effort, but with awareness. Not with fighting circumstances, but by stepping into a higher state of being. Most people misunderstand the mirror. They think they must fight the reflection. If they are unhappy, they try to force happiness through outer action. If they are poor, they hustle endlessly to change their condition. If they are lonely, they seek others to fill the void. But the reflection does not respond to pressure. It responds to perception. You must not try to change the image in the mirror with your hands. You must change your face, your expression, your essence, and then the reflection will follow. The world is not your master, it is your servant, and it serves the dominant state of consciousness you dwell in. When you wake each morning, the world appears the same. Your room, your life, your responsibilities greet you with familiar form. But underneath this repetition is the deeper truth. What you call reality is the visible record of past assumptions, your beliefs hardened into fact. What you consistently entertained in thought, feeling, and imagination yesterday becomes the frame of today. So when something unpleasant arises, ask not, why is this happening to me? But rather, what state did I unknowingly dwell in that produced this? In this way, you become a conscious creator instead of a blind reactor. To transform your life, do not chase outcomes. Change the state within. The person who is successful externally is not simply lucky. They have, either consciously or unconsciously, assumed a state of success. They believe they are worthy. They feel confident. They see opportunity. And because they carry that inner atmosphere, life responds accordingly. The doors open, the people arrive, the ideas flow. It is not magic, it is resonance. The state you inhabit colors everything. It determines your expectations, your decisions, and how you interpret what happens to you. Two people can experience the same event and respond in completely different ways because of the state they live in. One sees failure as defeat, the other as a lesson. One sees loss as punishment, the other as redirection. The event is the same. The perception creates the outcome. This is why inner work matters more than anything else. Without it, you remain at the mercy of appearances. Tossed by waves you don't realize you created. When you truly grasp that the outer world reflects the inner, you become deliberate in your inner speech. You guard your thoughts like treasures. You no longer say, "I am always struggling" or "nothing ever works out for me," because you understand these are not harmless statements. They are seeds. They are commands issued to the mirror of life, and the mirror always responds in kind. So you replace these declarations with, "I am guided. I live in abundance. Things work in my favor," not because they are nice phrases, but because they shift your state. And your state controls your world. But shifting your state is not about repeating hollow affirmations while remaining emotionally tied to the old story. It is about genuinely feeling the reality of the new assumption. If you want to experience love, you must begin to feel lovable. If you want abundance, you must feel secure. The feeling comes first, the reality follows. The order cannot be reversed. Life doesn't respond to words, it responds to vibration. And vibration is determined by your dominant state. Every encounter, every event, every so-called coincidence is drawn to you by the nature of the state you embody. This is why people often find themselves stuck in cycles. They change jobs, relationships, or locations, but the same problems follow. Why? Because the outer forms are different, but the inner state is unchanged. It is not the scenery that must shift, it is the observer. When you assume a new state and remain loyal to it, even when appearances deny it, the entire world begins to rearrange to reflect that new reality. You must stop seeing circumstances as causes. They are not. They are effects. If you are in debt, the cause is not the bills. It is the state of lack. If you are in conflict, the cause is not the other person. It is the state of division you dwell in. When you rise in consciousness, you transcend the problem because you are no longer operating from the level of the issue. You are operating from a higher state that makes the problem irrelevant. This is why waiting for outer change before you feel different is a trap. If you wait to feel loved until someone loves you, you may never feel it. If you wait to feel successful until you see success, it may never come. The world cannot deliver what you are not willing to feel first. The mirror does not smile until you smile. The reflection will not change unless the face in front of it does. And so your work is internal, to assume the new state, to live in it, to carry its feeling as if it were already true, not just in meditation, but throughout the day, in the way you talk to yourself, in the way you walk into a room, in the decisions you make, in the things you accept and the things you reject. Every moment is an opportunity to reinforce the new state or slip back into the old one. And you will know which one you are in, not by your words, but by how you feel and what continues to repeat in your life. The mirror is faithful, it cannot lie. If you see fear, examine your assumptions. If you see lack, examine your beliefs. If you see love, peace, growth, it means your inner world is shifted. Trust it, cultivate it. Because once you master the inner, the outer must obey. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. Faith is the foundation of all transformation, not as a passive belief or blind hope, but as a living, breathing loyalty to the invisible. It is the refusal to be ruled by what the eyes see or what the world declares possible. It is the unwavering conviction that what you have assumed within yourself is already a reality, regardless of whether there is any outer proof. To remain loyal to that unseen reality is not easy, especially when everything around you contradicts it. But it is in that loyalty that the true power of faith reveals itself. It is not about reciting phrases or clinging to wishful thinking. It is about dwelling in the unseen with such assurance that the visible world has no choice but to conform. Most people believe in what they can touch, what they can measure, what they can explain. They are loyal to facts, to evidence, to the rules of the physical world. But spiritual creation does not obey those rules. It obeys the state of consciousness. If you desire to change your life, you must shift your faith from the external to the internal. You must no longer ask, "What do I see?" but instead declare, "What do I know within?" The senses may tell you nothing has changed. The bank account may still show lack. The relationship may still be broken. The body may still show signs of illness. But if within you have assumed the end, if you have accepted the wish as fulfilled, then your job is to remain loyal to that inner vision, to that unseen truth. Faith is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is a decision. It is the decision to identify with the state you wish to embody and to persist in that identification until it becomes your new natural state. When fear arises, faith answers. When doubt whispers, faith speaks louder. When the old self tries to return, faith says, "No, I am now a new creation." This is not the kind of faith that waits for results to feel secure. It is the kind that stands secure, even in the absence of results. It is not reactive, it is creative. And that is where its strength lies. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, but within you are calm. Why? Because you know the storm is temporary. You know the sun is already shining beyond the clouds. You know the outcome is already yours. That is faith. It is not being blind to reality. It is seeing a deeper reality and refusing to be shaken. It is not a denial of facts. It is a declaration of truth. The facts say, "You can't." Faith says, "I already did." The facts say, "It's over." Faith says, "This is just the beginning." This inner loyalty to the unseen is not passive waiting. It is active embodiment. You speak as the healed, not the sick. You live as the blessed, not the burdened. You move as the successful, not the striving. And though the world may not yet reflect it, your inner world has already shifted. And that inner shift must be followed by the outer. For the outer has no life of its own. It only echoes what you continually affirm within. The greatest challenge is to remain faithful when nothing seems to change. When the days pass and the outer world still looks the same. When discouragement tries to creep in and tell you it's not working, but that is the very moment your faith is tested. And that is the moment it must stand firm. Anyone can believe when things go well, but to believe when they don't, that is where transformation is born. Faith is not proven in the sunshine. It is proven in the silence, in the shadows, in the space between the planting and the harvest. To remain loyal to the invisible is to treat it as if it is more real than anything your senses can detect. You walk with it. You think from it. You make decisions based on it. If you are believing for abundance, you do not make choices rooted in fear. If you are believing for love, you do not speak from loneliness. If you are believing for healing, you do not dwell in thoughts of weakness. You align your mind, your emotions, and your actions with the state you have accepted as real. And when all parts of you are in agreement, the outer must bend. This is why faith is often misunderstood. It is not about passively hoping something might happen one day. It is about stepping into the reality now. It is about saying, "This is who I am. This is what I have. This is where I dwell," even if the world laughs or doubts or criticizes. You are not living for their approval. You are not waiting for their validation. You are walking in your truth. And your truth is not dependent on external evidence. It is born of an inner knowing that defies time and limitation. Your task is not to convince others, it is to remain convinced within. You are not here to prove your vision, you are here to embody it. And as you do, the world will come into alignment. Not through force, not through striving, but through the natural unfolding that follows unwavering faith. You are the center of creation, and your faith is the force that shapes what appears around you. So be selective in what you believe, be deliberate in what you assume, and be loyal, fiercely loyal to the world you have chosen within. Because when you live in this way, you no longer need to chase, to struggle, to plead. You dwell in a state of fulfillment, and from that state everything flows. You become magnetic, not because you are trying, but because you are aligned. The world cannot help but reflect what you persistently know to be true. And so the invisible becomes visible, not because it was created then, but because it was always there, waiting for your faith to call it forth. To act as if you already possess what you desire is to move in complete alignment with the unseen truth. It is the moment when belief becomes embodiment. You're no longer trying to believe. You are no longer waiting to see a sign. You are no longer caught in the illusion that the world must change first before you feel different. You realize that it is your inner state that governs your behavior, and when you deliberately shift that inner state, your outer actions naturally follow. And you do not force yourself to act. You act because you are. Because you have already become the one who has what you once only longed for. Most people wait for proof before they change their behavior. They wait to feel rich before spending with trust. They wait to be loved before acting in confidence. They wait for success before speaking with authority. But those who understand the deeper law of consciousness know that it works in reverse. You act from the state, not toward it. And it is that shift from pursuit to possession that transforms your life. When you begin to carry yourself as the one who already has, you send a clear and powerful message to the universe. You declare, "This is who I am now," and life reorganizes to reflect your new identity. This is not performance. It's not pretense. It is not about faking confidence or pretending something you do not believe. It is about entering the emotional and mental atmosphere of the fulfilled desire and living from it sincerely. It is not about trying to impress others or convince yourself with empty gestures. It is about the quiet knowing that you are now in possession of your desire, and your actions naturally flow from that state. Just as a person who is truly joyful does not need to try to smile, or a person who is truly confident does not need to force boldness, you do not need to strain to act the part. When you are the part, the behavior follows. Think of a person who just received good news, a job offer, a healing report, a long-awaited message. Their energy shifts instantly. Their voice changes, their step is lighter, their entire countenance reflects the inner shift. But what if you chose to carry that energy before the outer confirmation? What if you decided to walk as if the offer was already yours, as if the door had already opened? That is the essence of creation through assumption. You don't wait for the outer to give you permission to feel. It is the feeling that gives the outer its instruction. To act as if you already possess something is to honor the invisible as more real than the visible. When you want love, you act like someone who is already loved. You treat yourself with the dignity and care that someone cherished would show. You no longer chase people or seek validation because you are full. When you want wealth, you act with calm confidence, not from fear or lack. You become a steward, not a struggler. You do not throw money away or spend recklessly, but you stop making decisions based on desperation. You are guided by the energy of having, not missing. This principle changes how you show up in every area of life. If you desire success, you speak with authority. You take steps that match the life you want. You don't wait to feel ready. You move because the version of you that already has success would move. You take the call, you write the email, you show up with excellence. Not because you're trying to earn your worth, but because you already know your worth. You are not acting to get something, you are expressing what you already are, even when no one sees it, even when the evidence has not appeared. Especially then, that is when your actions carry the most weight, because you are declaring a truth that the senses cannot yet confirm. You are living by a higher law, and the world cannot help but bend to it in time. When you show up as the person who already has what you want, doors open that were once invisible. Conversations happen that once seemed impossible. Ideas flow that were once locked behind self-doubt. The universe responds not to what you want, it responds to who you are being. You must understand that your actions are not just physical movements. They are signals. They are messages sent into the field of possibility. Every step you take in alignment with your fulfilled desire is a vote for that reality. Every decision made from the end state brings you closer to the visible manifestation. But when you act from the old state, even if unintentionally, you reinforce the delay. You say with your actions, I don't have it yet, and life echoes that back. This is why your self-concept matters. If you still see yourself as someone who is waiting, lacking, striving, then your actions, even if well-meaning, will carry that energy. But if you see yourself as someone who already has, your entire life begins to mirror that self-image. You will no longer act out of insecurity or fear. You will act from peace, from trust, from fulfillment. And this kind of action carries a different frequency. It magnetizes the very thing you desire because it already lives in you. So when you step into your day, step into it with the energy of completion. Eat your meal with gratitude as if you are already abundant. Speak with clarity as if you are already heard. Dress with dignity as if you are already respected. Make decisions as if the universe is already conspiring in your favor. You are not lying to yourself. You are aligning with your higher self. The self that knows it is done. The self that does not need proof to believe. The self that moves because the inner reality is already secure. This is the sacred dance between being and doing. You are not acting to convince anyone. You are not acting to deceive yourself. You are acting because you believe, because you know. And when that knowing saturates your being, your actions become a natural extension of your assumption. They are no longer separate from your belief. They are your belief in motion. And over time, the world must catch up. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Because you chose to carry the vibration of already having. Because you dared to act as if it were done. And the mirror of life, ever faithful, had no choice but to reflect your inner reality back to you. Persistence is the golden thread that binds the invisible with the visible. It is the discipline of remaining in the state of fulfillment, not for a moment or a day, but until the unseen becomes seen. Without persistence, even the most vivid assumption fades into nothing. Even the strongest faith can waver without the steady hand of persistence guiding it. Persistence is the silent vow you make with yourself to not give up your inner vision, even when the outer world mocks it, even when the evidence seems slow, even when your senses tempt you to abandon what you've claimed. It is the deep knowing that what you have imagined is already yours, and that your job is not to question how or when, but to remain. Every seed requires time to grow. No gardener plants a seed and then digs it up each morning to see if it's sprouting. Yet this is what so many people do with their assumptions. They imagine once, feel the joy of the wish fulfilled briefly, but when no change is visible in a few days, they retreat. They return to doubt, to worry, to the old state of lack. And then they say the law does not work. But the law always works. It simply responds to persistence. To assume the feeling once is a start. To return to it consistently is creation. It is persistence that keeps the seed buried, protected, nourished, until it bursts forth into reality. Persistence does not mean tension. It is not about clenching your fists or trying to force belief. It is about gentle, steady loyalty to your vision. A quiet refusal to abandon the new state, no matter how loud the old world becomes. It is the choice to return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled again and again. When fear comes, you return. When disappointment whispers, you return. When the evidence of your senses contradicts your vision, and every time you return, you reinforce the foundation of your new reality. You say to life, "This is who I am now," and life responds, "Very well." There is a rhythm to creation, and persistence honors that rhythm. There is a time for planting, a time for waiting, a time for harvest. The waiting is not inactivity, it is inner work. It is continuing to dwell in the new identity, to walk as the one who already has, to think and feel as if the prayer has already been answered. This is where most people falter. They believe their circumstances more than their imagination. They believe their senses more than their inner knowing. But if you understand that the world is only a delayed reflection, you will stop reacting to it and start mastering it. Persistence allows you to stand still when everything around you shifts and sways. It makes you unshakable. True persistence is not gritting your teeth. It is a love affair with your vision. You fall in love with the feeling of already being what you desire. You dwell in it because it feels good, because it feels real, because it feels like home. And when you feel at home in the new state, the outer world must come and knock on your door, carrying with it the form that matches your feeling. It has no other choice. The law is exact. The mirror cannot reflect what is not before it. The trap is in believing that nothing is happening. But creation is always happening. Just as a seed begins its work in darkness, your assumption takes root long before it shows its face. Do not be fooled by appearances. If nothing seems to change, it is not a sign of failure. It is a test of loyalty. Are you loyal to the invisible, or will you run back to the familiar the moment reality doesn't bow immediately? Persistence is your answer. It is your weapon. It is your declaration that no matter how long it takes, you will not move from the state of fulfillment. The universe is not withholding anything from you. It has never held back a single thing. The abundance, the love, the wealth, the peace, the fulfillment, it's all there, all of it. But it waits. It waits not with reluctance, but with a patient knowing. It waits for you not to ask harder or strive more, but to become. The universe is ready. The question is, are you? To say the universe is ready to give you everything is not to say it has something that you lack, no. It is to say that everything you've ever wanted already exists in a finished state. The reality where you are whole, abundant, successful, deeply loved. That reality is already real. It is already vibrating in the unseen, waiting not for effort but alignment, waiting for you to close the gap between your inner world and your outer experience. You must understand, reality does not respond to need. It responds to identity. You don't get what you want, you get who you are. And who you are is not defined by your past, your pain, or your current circumstances. Who you are is determined by your assumption, by what you dare to claim as true even when all evidence says otherwise. The universe is not responding to your complaints. It is responding to the frequency you choose to hold. Your inner dialogue is the command center of creation. When you live in the feeling of lack, of not having, of hoping and wishing and waiting, you delay the arrival of everything that is already yours. But the moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the moment you walk, speak, breathe, and think as if it is done, you collapse the distance between your desire and its manifestation. You must feel it real, not once, not occasionally, not when it's easy, but consistently. Like breathing. Breathing, the most powerful shift you will ever make is from seeking to knowing, from chasing to resting, from hoping to embodying. You must know with an unshakable inner certainty that what you desire is already finished, that the money you wish for has already been printed, that the love you long for is already alive in another's heart, that the health, peace, and opportunities are already formed in the realm that creates all things. You are not here to force. You are here to choose. And you choose with your awareness, with your imagination, and with your assumptions. Imagination is not some childish escape. It is the divine blueprint of reality. It is the sacred canvas upon which the future is painted. Every time you imagine something and dwell in that experience, you are creating a spiritual prototype, a mold. And if you persist in that state, life must conform to it. That is not a metaphor, that is law. The universe rearranges itself for the man who knows where he belongs. You don't need signs to believe, you need belief to see signs. The world is only a mirror. It cannot give you what you refuse to give yourself internally. Walk like it's yours, speak like you already have it, think like it's done. That energy is not arrogance, it's alignment. You are not waiting on life. Life is waiting on you to feel it real, to inhabit the version of you who already has it, who already knows, who already walks in that blessing. That is how you become magnetic. That is how the universe opens doors no man can shut. That is how you shift timelines without even lifting a finger. The most powerful thing you can do today is this: assume the state. Embody the version of you who already has it. Live from the end. Because when you live from the end, the universe must catch up to your conviction. It must organize reality to match your internal state. The world bends not to your words, but to your unwavering assumption. That's the secret. Not to beg, not to plead, but to assume, to receive it now in consciousness, to feel it now as truth. And then watch how everything changes without effort. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. This statement shatters the illusion most people live under. They believe that by merely wanting something intensely enough, they will somehow draw it toward them. But desire without identity is powerless. The truth is far more profound and yet so simple that it escapes most minds that are entangled in effort and striving. The universe does not hear your pleading voice or your desperate thoughts. It mirrors your state. It bends itself to the energy you hold consistently, not the words you speak occasionally. Your current reality, every detail of it, is not a punishment or a reward. It is simply a reflection of your inner assumptions, your habitual feelings, your dominant thoughts, and most of all, your self-concept. People constantly ask why their prayers go unanswered, or why their affirmations fail to produce results. But the answer is hidden within the nature of consciousness itself. You cannot deceive the universe with empty declarations. You cannot say, "I am rich," while inwardly feeling poor, and expect your world to change. The feeling of being poor is the true request being made. The universe reads the emotional tone, not the surface sentence. You might be shouting for abundance, but if your soul is anchored in lack, the echo you receive will be lack, dressed in various forms. It could come as financial scarcity, relational neediness, or inner anxiety, because all of these are born from the same root, the state of being that says, "I am not enough. I don't have enough." So the work begins not with the world, but with the self. Who do you believe yourself to be? This is not a philosophical question. It is the foundation of your experience. If you believe you are unlucky, unworthy, or unseen, then no amount of trying will fix your life. You will unknowingly sabotage opportunities, misread signs, and attract people who reinforce that inner identity. And it is not punishment, it is law. It is the universe saying, "As you assume, so shall it be." You are not attracting with effort, you are attracting with embodiment. You are calling things not with your voice, but with your vibration. Imagine a radio station. If you are tuned into a frequency that plays sorrow and conflict, you cannot expect to hear songs of joy and victory. You can wish, pray, and even scream for a new tune. But unless you change the dial within, the broadcast remains the same. Your life, your circumstances, your relationships, they are all manifestations of the station you're tuned into internally. And tuning is not done with effort. It is done with alignment. It is done with assumption. You must begin to think, feel, and act as the version of yourself who already has what you seek, not because you are trying to trick the universe, but because you are becoming one with the version of you that belongs to that reality. This is why it's so crucial to examine the stories you repeat about yourself. Every time you say, "I always mess up," or "things never work out for me," or "no one truly loves me," you are not merely expressing frustration. You are giving instructions to the universe. You are cementing a state. And that state becomes your life. It becomes your future. Words become flesh, not because they are magical, but because they reinforce a vibration. A man who believes he is worthy will walk into a room differently. He will make choices that align with abundance. He will say no to things that contradict his worth. And as a result, life bends to reflect that state. The same man, if he believes he is inadequate, will shy away from opportunity, tolerate disrespect, and expect disappointment. And the universe, with perfect neutrality, delivers what he orders through his belief. Your concept of self is the command, not what you say out loud, but what you consistently feel to be true. You could walk through the world chanting affirmations all day long, but if your internal world is filled with doubt, fear, and unworthiness, then your outer world will reflect that chaos. The universe doesn't give based on desire. It gives based on certainty. Not arrogance, not entitlement, but deep spiritual knowing. That still place within you that says, this is who I am, this is what belongs to me. That feeling is the magnet. And so, everything begins with you. If you want to change your life, you don't need to change the world. You need to change your assumption about yourself. That is the core truth most people spend a lifetime avoiding. They change jobs, change relationships, move cities, start new projects, and yet their inner story remains the same. And so they find the same patterns haunting them in new disguises. It is not the world that must shift first. It is the self. This is not about ego. It is not about forcing a fake sense of superiority. It is about uncovering the truth of who you are beneath the conditioning, beneath the voices that told you you're not good enough, beneath the failures that made you doubt your own brilliance. At your core, you are infinite potential. The universe knows this. It waits for you to know it too. When you step into that awareness, not occasionally, but daily, moment by moment, everything changes. You become the cause, not the effect. You stop reacting to life and begin creating it. Because life was never random. It was always responding. So the real work is to ask yourself, what state am I living in right now? Not what you wish, not what you say, but what you feel to be real. Are you walking in lack or abundance, fear or faith, love or unworthiness? And once you become aware of that state, you have a choice, a sacred choice, to shift, to climb into a new identity, not by forcing, but by assuming, by imagining yourself already there, by making it so real in your inner world that the outer world has no choice but to match. That's the secret. The transformation of self is the transformation of everything. Because the universe cannot help but reflect the one thing it always listens to, your being, your essence, your assumption. Because you never get what you want, you only ever get who you are. Live from the end, not toward it. This is not just a statement of belief. It is the great secret of manifestation hidden in plain sight. The mistake most people make is to live in pursuit of their desires, to chase their dreams with the assumption that what they want exists somewhere out there, far from their reach. They place their blessings in the future, believing they must work, strive, and struggle their way into alignment with something distant and uncertain. But the truth is entirely different. The end is not out there. It's in you. And it becomes real the moment you dare to live as if it's already done. Living from the end does not mean pretending in a hollow sense. It means dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled with such inner conviction that the outer world begins to obey your inner reality. To live from the end is to stand in the finished state mentally and emotionally before there is any external evidence. It is to claim your desire not as something you are reaching for, but as something you already possess, something that already belongs to you because it exists in the eternal realm of consciousness. Creation, in its truest form, is finished. Everything that you desire already exists in a completed spiritual form. You are not creating your desires from nothing. You are selecting them, aligning with them, embodying them. The only distance between you and what you seek is the gap in awareness. When you live toward the end, your energy says, it's not here yet. And that feeling of absence becomes the dominant signal you broadcast into the universe. You affirm lack, even if your words are filled with hope. But when you live from the end, your state says, it is already mine. And that deep conviction begins to pull everything into alignment. Your thoughts shift, your actions change, your reality bends. The people, circumstances, and events that match your new state begin to show up, not because you forced them, but because you allowed them. There is a massive difference between wishing for something and dwelling in the experience of already having it. Wishing keeps it away. It tells the universe that it's not yet real, that you are incomplete without it. And so the universe mirrors that incompleteness. But when you close your eyes and enter the feeling of the end, when you walk like the person who already has the answer, when you think from the place of the manifested outcome, you dissolve the illusion of separation. You stop being the seeker and become the possessor. You merge with the reality you desire, and in doing so, you bring it into this dimension. This principle defies the logic of the world. The world teaches you to react to what is, to let circumstances dictate your mood and identity. But this path calls for something higher. It calls for spiritual maturity. It asks you to live beyond appearances, to feel the truth of your desire even when nothing in your world reflects it yet. It asks you to walk in faith, not blind belief, but embodied knowing, to feel the joy of love before the person arrives, to feel the security of wealth before the money hits your account, to feel the health in your body before the diagnosis changes. This is not delusion. This is creation. Think of an actor who steps into a role. They don't just memorize lines. They become the character. They walk, speak, and emote from the perspective of that identity. They allow the role to overtake their current personality until the audience believes it too. This is what you must do with the version of you who already has what you desire. You must become them, not someday, not later, but now. That version of you is already alive within your consciousness, waiting for permission to emerge. When you live from the end, you give it that permission. And once you begin to live from that end, something remarkable happens. The world starts to organize itself differently. You begin to notice things you never saw before, opportunities, connections, and pathways that were previously invisible. You begin to feel an inner peace that is no longer dependent on conditions. You begin to act in ways that are aligned with your new identity. Decisions become clearer, destructive patterns begin to fall away, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer seek validation, you embody it. Because the end is no longer a place you're trying to reach, it's the place you're living from. Living from the end also means giving up the need to constantly monitor the process. You don't plant a seed and dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You trust the soil, you water it with belief. You keep showing up as if the harvest is certain. The same applies to your desires. When you live from the end, you no longer wonder when it will come or how it will unfold. You know it's already done in consciousness. And that is enough. The moment you assume the end, the universe begins to reflect that state back to you. Not on your timeline, but on divine timing, which is always perfect. This is why discipline of the mind is so vital. Your senses will scream at you that nothing has changed. Your bank account may still look the same. Your relationships may still be broken. Your body may still ache. But none of these things are the final word unless you give them that power. The final word is your assumption. And if your assumption is rooted in the end, if your inner dialogue affirms that you already have it, then reality must yield. It must bend. It must conform. Because the outer world is not the master. It is the servant of your imagination. To live from the end is to walk in the spirit of completion. It is to let your heart beat in harmony with the future you've claimed. It is to no longer argue with appearances, but to rest in the unseen. And in that rest, in that sacred assumption, the world begins to respond. You are not asking for a miracle, you are being the miracle. Because when you live from the end, your life stops becoming a chase for fulfillment and becomes an unfolding of what you already are. You begin to experience what was always yours, not through effort, but through alignment. Not by waiting, but by choosing. Not by force, but by faith. And in that place, the universe is no longer something outside of you. It becomes a mirror, reflecting the end you dared to claim as your beginning. Imagination is not a fleeting thought or a harmless daydream. It is the very fabric of creation, the divine faculty through which reality is shaped and molded. Most people pass through life unaware of the power they hold within their own minds, mistaking imagination for fantasy, treating it as a mere escape rather than the source of their entire experience. But the truth is far more radical and more empowering. Your imagination is the creative center of your world. Everything you have, everything you lack, everything you become, it all begins in that sacred inner space where you see, feel, and believe before the world catches up. To understand imagination as the blueprint of reality is to understand the root of all manifestation. Nothing enters your life unless it first enters your imagination. You may think it was luck, coincidence, hard work, or chance, but look closely. Every great achievement, every fulfilled desire began as an imagined reality in someone's mind. Whether you do this consciously or unconsciously, your imagination is always working, always constructing, always projecting what you accept as true deep within. And the universe, in perfect obedience, arranges itself to reflect those inner pictures with startling precision. The tragedy is that most people use this sacred tool against themselves. They imagine failure. They rehearse rejection. They play out scenarios of loss, betrayal, and unworthiness again and again in their minds. And then they wonder why their lives feel like a reflection of fear and pain. But the truth is, they were imagining all along, just in the wrong direction. They gave their creative power to anxiety, and the world simply complied. The images you hold in your mind, especially when accompanied by strong emotion, are blueprints. You are not daydreaming. You are issuing instructions to the universe. If you can grasp this even for a moment, everything changes. You begin to realize that you are not a passive participant in life. You are its architect. Your inner world is not a private escape. It is the construction site of your future. And the more vividly, the more consistently, the more emotionally you dwell in the feeling of your desired state, the faster reality shifts to accommodate it. You are not hoping that something might happen. You are creating its foundation in the invisible, where all things are born. Think of the imagination as a spiritual womb. You conceive the idea. You nourish it with belief and emotion. You carry it in silence. And then, without fanfare, it manifests. It arrives not as a miracle out of nowhere, but as the visible child of your invisible faith. This is not poetic metaphor. It is spiritual law. Every fulfilled desire is born first in the secret, sacred space of inner knowing. You feel it real long before you touch it in the world. And the beauty of this law is that you don't need permission from anyone. You don't need resources, qualifications, or outside validation to begin. The only requirement is your willingness to turn inward and create, to paint scenes on the canvas of your mind so real, so emotionally saturated, that they become more true to you than your present circumstances. That is the secret of those who manifest great things. They do not wait for the world to approve. They withdraw into imagination, into that holy place of becoming, and they dwell there until the world cannot help but follow. This inner work is not always easy. The outer world often contradicts your inner vision. You will be tempted to stop imagining because nothing is happening. But that is only an illusion. Something is happening beneath the surface, behind the curtain. When a seed is planted in the soil, you don't see the roots form, but they do. When you dwell in imagination, you are planting the roots of your future. Just because you can't see it yet doesn't mean it isn't growing. Imagination must be held with persistence. You cannot visit your dream once and expect it to flourish. You must return to it daily, sometimes hourly, with reverence and focus. And not just as a thought, but as a feeling. You must feel the experience as if it is already yours. What would you feel if you already had what you desire? That is the emotion you must learn to generate, because that feeling is the signal, the frequency that brings your imagined state into alignment with your physical reality. But it is not just about visualization. It's about dwelling, about entering that state and staying there long enough to rewire your subconscious identity. You don't just want to see the scene. You want to become the version of yourself who lives inside it. Feel the surroundings, hear the sounds, touch the textures, taste the success, inhale the freedom. The more sensory rich your imagined reality, the more quickly it takes root. You are not escaping. You are rehearsing. You are rehearsing the future so completely that when it arrives, it feels familiar because you've already lived it within. This is the power the ancients spoke of in veiled language. It is the power of faith. Faith is not a vague hope. It is the embodiment of an unseen reality. When you live in imagination, you are walking by faith, not by sight. You are stepping into the unseen as if it is already seen. You are believing before evidence, and in doing so, you make evidence appear. This is not fantasy. This is mastery. The world you live in now is nothing but the after effect of your previous imaginal acts. And if you want to change the world around you, you must return to the only place that ever held the power to begin with, your imagination. That is where the real work is done, not in effort, but in inner clarity, not in striving, but in becoming, not in chasing the world, but in constructing your world first within, and then allowing it to unfold outward in its perfect timing. So if your life feels stuck, if nothing seems to change, stop looking outward for the answer. The problem is not in your world, it is in your blueprint. And the blueprint is held in your imagination. The house cannot look different unless the plan is altered. If you desire more, better, greater, then go into that sacred space within and imagine more clearly. Don't wish, don't hope, create, embody, assume, and above all, feel. Because imagination without feeling is weak. But imagination infused with belief, with deep emotion, becomes unstoppable. It becomes the command that the universe cannot ignore. It becomes the mold that life must fill. You are the designer, you are the dreamer, you are the one the universe listens to. And the quality of your life will always be a reflection of the quality of your inner vision. Assumption is the path to manifestation. It's not hard work. It's not how many hours you grind or how long you wait. It's not how desperately you wish or how passionately you plead. The true power lies in what you assume to be true about yourself, about your life, about what is already yours. Assumption is the silent architect of reality. It works beneath the surface, shaping every experience, attracting every person, arranging every event to match the internal truth you have accepted without question. It doesn't matter whether you shout it out loud or keep it locked inside your soul. If you assume it as your truth, the world must comply. And this is where most people miss the mark. They wait for signs, for proof, for validation before they dare to believe. But that's not how creation works. You don't wait for evidence, you become the evidence. You don't need to see it to believe it, you believe it so you can see it. And belief in its most potent form is assumption. It is the quiet conviction that says, this is who I am. This is already mine. Not someday. Not when circumstances align. Now. The moment you assume something with emotional certainty, you begin to collapse the space between desire and reality. It's no longer something far away. It's here, in your spirit, shaping your actions, shifting your energy, altering your trajectory in ways you cannot fully grasp. Yet, you have assumed many things in your life, often without realizing it. You've assumed failure, you've assumed rejection, you've assumed being overlooked, underestimated, unloved. And every time you did, the world responded in kind. You thought life was punishing you, but it was only reflecting your internal decree. Your assumptions are not neutral, they are creative forces. They are seeds planted in the soil of consciousness. And consciousness, being infinitely fertile, produces whatever you plant, without judgment, without hesitation. Whether you assume greatness or smallness, abundance or lack, joy or misery, life has no choice but to reflect it back. This is why assumption must be treated with reverence. It is not a tool to be used carelessly. Every thought you let harden into belief becomes the lens through which the world is shaped. If you assume the worst, you will always be right. If you assume things will go wrong, they will find a way to obey you. But if you assume success, love, peace, healing, then even in the midst of chaos, life will begin to bend toward your faith. It may not happen all at once, but it will begin quietly and faithfully to reorganize itself around your assumption. The reason assumption is so powerful is because it bypasses effort. It works in the unseen. It is not a loud, anxious demand. It is a settled state of being. You don't have to force anything when you assume it's already yours. You don't chase. You don't panic. You don't plead with life to give you something. You simply are the one who already has it. That energy is irresistible. It draws things to you. It magnetizes outcomes and makes others respond to you differently. Because even if they don't consciously understand it, they feel the shift in your presence. You no longer vibrate with lack. You vibrate with certainty. To assume is to take the final step in the spiritual journey from desire to fulfillment. Desire begins the process, but assumption completes it. It transforms you from a beggar of reality into a master of reality. You no longer ask life to treat you well. You assume that it already does. You no longer wonder if you're worthy. You assume your worth is unquestionable. And in that quiet inner confidence, the world loses its power to control you. You begin to shape it from within, not react to it from without. Think of the difference between a person who hopes and a person who assumes. The one who hopes says, "I wish it will happen." But behind that wish is doubt, fear, and instability. The one who assumes says, "It is already done." They move differently. They speak with quiet authority. They carry an energy that changes rooms. And over time, they attract realities that match the identity they've chosen, not by striving, but by being. Assumption must be consistent. It cannot be a momentary burst of faith followed by hours of worry. That's not how this works. You must live in the state of the assumption, day after day, even when the world appears unchanged. Especially when the world appears unchanged. Because that's the test. That's when most people quit. They say, "I assumed it yesterday, but nothing happened," and so they go back to doubt, and the manifestation dissolves. But the one who continues to assume, who walks in the fulfillment of their desire, even when everything says otherwise, that person is the one who bends reality. It's not always easy. You'll be tempted to question yourself. You'll be tempted to look at the evidence around you and let it talk you out of your assumption. But that's when you must remember, the outer world is old news. It's just a reflection of your past assumptions. If you want the future to look different, hold your assumption until it takes root. Water it with emotion. Protect it from the weeds of fear and doubt. Nurture it with repetition and inner silence. And when the time is right, it will emerge. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. There is no need to explain your assumption to others. In fact, it's better if you don't. People who are bound by the visible will try to drag you back into doubt. They'll call you delusional, unrealistic, naive. But let them talk. You are not here to live by consensus. You are here to create from consciousness. You are here to walk by inner knowing, not outer approval. Let them see your reality after it manifests. Let your assumption speak for itself when it becomes flesh. Until then, walk in silence, walk in faith. Walk in the energy of what is already yours. Assume the identity that matches your desire. If you want love, assume you are already deeply loved. If you want abundance, assume you are already prosperous. If you want healing, assume your body is already whole. It may feel strange at first, like you're lying to yourself, but you're not. You are correcting the lie you've lived under. You are replacing the false identity that was formed in fear with the truth that was always buried inside you. You are not trying to convince the world. You are trying to remind your soul. Every time you assume your highest truth, the universe takes note. Not in some distant place, but here, in the very fabric of reality. It begins to reorganize, to shift, to create new pathways and possibilities that align with your new state. And often the changes begin subtly. A new opportunity, a sudden insight, a chance encounter. But over time, they compound. The external world begins to resemble the inner one. And when people ask how you did it, you won't need to explain. You'll simply know it was assumption. Quiet, unwavering, sacred assumption. That was the path. That was the power. That was the truth all along. You must receive it in consciousness before you ever see it in life. That's the law. That's the principle. That's the pattern behind every miracle, every shift, every manifestation. And yet, most people try to reverse this law. They want to see the evidence first. They want the money to appear, the person to love them, the opportunity to knock on their door before they dare to believe it's real. But life does not work that way. The outer world is the effect. The inner world is the cause. Until you accept your desire as real within, the external world cannot reflect it back to you. The gate to manifestation doesn't open when the world agrees. It opens when your consciousness accepts. Receiving is not waiting, it is not hoping, it is not a desperate plea sent into the silence. It is a sacred alignment with what already exists. Everything you want is already finished in the unseen. The wealth, the love, the healing, the opportunity, they are already formed in the eternal realm of possibility. They are not being created when you ask. They are already created the moment you imagine them, and the moment you receive them internally, fully, without doubt or hesitation. You create the bridge through which they move from the unseen into the seen. But this receiving must be whole. It cannot be partial. It cannot be conditional. You cannot say, I'll believe I have it if I see a sign, or I'll feel abundant once my bank account changes. That's not receiving. That's delay disguised as logic. True receiving says, it is done, even when nothing has changed on the outside. It says, I have it, when the world says, you're still waiting. It is a surrender into certainty, not passivity, not laziness, but a deep inner knowing that creation begins and ends in the mind, and that the world only mirrors what you've accepted as true in your soul. To receive in consciousness is to occupy the emotional and mental space of your fulfilled desire. It is to think from it, not about it. Most people are trapped in a cycle of thinking about what they want. They talk about it, dream of it, complain about its absence, but they never mentally step into the version of themselves who already has it. They wait for the outside world to grant them permission to believe. But that permission must be given by the self, through faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Not because it's blind, but because it sees clearly what the senses cannot yet perceive. It is sight on a higher level. Receiving in consciousness means training your mind to feel the reality of your desire so vividly that it becomes more real to you than your current situation. It means closing your eyes and feeling the keys to your new house, the warmth of your partner's hand, the joy of a healed body, the peace of financial freedom, and not just seeing it, but living in it internally, rehearsing the scenes, feeling the emotions, speaking from that new state of being. You are not imagining to escape. You are imagining to align. You are creating a new center of identity, and the world must revolve around that new center. You cannot receive with doubt in your heart. Doubt is the silent thief that robs you of what's already yours. It tells you to look around and measure your progress with your eyes, to question every moment of silence, to fear every delay. But there are no delays in the spiritual world. There is only alignment or misalignment. The moment you fully receive it in consciousness is the moment the universe begins to move. You may not see immediate proof, but the shift has happened. The current has changed. The vibration has been altered. And now, life is catching up to your inner reality. Many people believe they have faith, but what they really have is hope tainted with fear. They try to speak positively, but underneath their words is a trembling doubt. That's not receiving. Receiving is quiet, steady, immovable. It's the calm that doesn't need to prove anything. It's the peace that comes from knowing you are not begging the universe, you are aligning with it. You are not asking for something foreign to you. You are welcoming home what has always belonged to you. There is no striving in true receiving. You are not chasing the thing. You are welcoming it. You are allowing it to come because you already see yourself as the person who holds it. The energy of striving pushes things away. It says, I don't have it yet, but the energy of receiving says it's already mine, and that shift in energy changes everything. It opens doors you didn't see before. It makes you aware of people, paths, and solutions that were invisible when you were trapped in a state of lack. You must become emotionally fluent in the reality you are receiving. Feel what it feels like to have it. Let that emotion fill your body. Let it color your thoughts. Let it change your decisions. Because once you receive it in consciousness, you will begin to act differently. Not because you are forcing yourself, but because the version of you who has what you desire behaves differently by nature. You won't need to fake confidence. You will feel it. You won't need to pretend to be successful. You'll already feel successful inside, and the world will follow suit. Receiving in consciousness also requires letting go. Letting go of how it will come, letting go of when, letting go of needing it so badly that you block it with your anxiety. The universe does not respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. And alignment is a relaxed knowing. It is the absence of urgency, the presence of quiet certainty. It's not saying, please make it happen. It's saying, thank you, it's already mine. Gratitude is the evidence of true receiving. You don't give thanks for what you hope for. You give thanks for what you know you have. This is not about faking it. It's about becoming it. Faking is hollow and full of resistance. Becoming is whole. It is when your imagination, your emotion, and your behavior all flow in the same direction. You think from your desire, you feel from your desire, and you live from your desire. That is when you are truly receiving. That is when the gate opens. That is when life begins to respond in ways that seem magical, but they are not magic. They are a law. And the greatest part is this: no one can stop you from receiving in consciousness. No circumstance is strong enough to block what you've already accepted within. No rejection, no delay, no mistake can overrule your inner decision. The moment you say, I have it, and mean it, not just in words but in your being, you become the cause of a new reality. And that new reality will move toward you, not because you chased it, but because you became the version of yourself who could hold it. That is what it means to receive in consciousness. To stop waiting, to stop doubting, to stop needing proof, and instead to walk as if it is done, to feel as if it is complete, to know without needing to explain or defend that what you carry within will shape what appears without. Because life is not waiting to give you anything. It is waiting for you to receive it first in the place where it always begins, within you.